if you know what I mean, how big he
Clearly.
is, or how little he is.
Well, I said this last week. He seems to be trying to snatch jail time from the jaws of civil liability. I mean, he might end up in jail in a case that represents no real threat of jail time for him.
I find it interesting that he's there also. Like,
why is he there?
He doesn't need to. I think it's what we're talking about. I think he just needs to be there sneering. Oh, by the way, a little sidebar. My favorite anecdote of the week. I spoke to Michael Cohen yesterday. I said, so what happened when you saw him face to face? He goes, I winked at him. So there you go. The cameras, unfortunately, were not able to catch Michael Cohen winking at Donald Trump. That's something I would have paid for.
Me too. Sue Craig, you brought it to our attention as a show, I think, first, this anger that is just seething from Trump. Tell me if the kids are as triggering as everything that's happened so far.
I mean, they could be. It's going to be interesting to see them up. We're going to see Don Jr. up first, and then Eric, and then Ivanka is now going to be mid next week. We have a sense of what they might say because we've either seen their depositions or we've seen pieces of them. And you mentioned at the top that Eric took the fifth. He also gave another deposition where he did talk. But they're going to be, I think, interesting, really, in different ways. And there could be, I think, I think anytime any of these folks step into a courtroom, there's some theater going on. So I expect to see some. But I think Eric and Ivanka, if I had to pick two, would be the ones to watch. And they're going to be asked, just I think all of them at the outset, just about these statements of financial condition we've heard so much about. These were the ones where Trump exaggerated his wealth and then submitted them to financial institutions, which is, what is, got them into trouble, and you're not supposed to do that. And they're going to be asked what they know about it, and were they involved in the drafting of it, and then were they, if not, who was? And that's just all three of them are going to get that. But I think with Eric, Eric has been essentially running the company for several years now, and I think is the most involved. He has been in court some days with his father, and he's intimately involved in some of the properties that the Attorney General is looking at. So I think that's what we can expect from him. I think he is probably going to be on the stand Thursday, potentially into Friday. That's what they're planning for. And then Ivanka is coming in mid next week, and she's going to be interesting because she was not named as a defendant in this. The appellate court said she sort of didn't fall in within the statute of limitation issues, but she has potentially really important information. She was an officer of the company for a while, and she was involved in two really critical projects that the Attorney General is looking at. One is Doral and a loan that was arranged with Deutsche Bank. She was involved in some of the introductions between the wealth management unit at Deutsche Bank and the Trump Organization. So what were those conversations? And a lot of questions about that loan, any misrepresentations about Doral, was she involved in them? And the same for the old post office. They were going to get similar questions on that property. So I think if I were to pick the three, I think the two, Eric and Ivanka, are going to be the most interesting as we head into next week with Ivanka.
Have we, Sue, heard from either of them since the judge found the Trump org liable for fraud?
We haven't heard from any of them, really. We've seen Eric in court behind his father, when he's been at the mic and he's been sitting in the courtroom, but we haven't heard publicly from any of them, no.